In this episode of Project 380, I'm going to be installing the first of many brake upgrades. Really and truthfully, the first thing you want to do if you are going to be putting any more power into your car is upgrading the braking system. With extra power and extra speed, you're going to need extra stopping force. I will be upgrading the brakes, the calipers and the pads in the very near future. But in this episode, I'm going to be installing a few supporting mods for these brake upgrades. What I'm going to be installing today is the standard master cylinder with a Davefab brake stopper and a Motamec bias valve. Let's get installing these, and along the way I'm going to explain what they do and what the benefits are. The master cylinder is still out of the car. I haven't reinstalled it after painting the engine bay, but now is a perfect time to upgrade it as I need to reinstall it. So yes, this is still the standard master cylinder, and this is the standard brake bias valve. I'm going to be replacing the whole brake bias valve with a Motamec adjustable bias valve. So I'll quickly whip the standard bias valve off and explain how it works. The standard bias valve, as you can see, has an F and two arrows. The fluid comes from the master cylinder into here, down into the front left hand brake, and the same, the fluid comes out of the master cylinder into here and down to the back brakes. It's actually this part here that is the standard bias valve, which controls the flow of how much braking force goes to the back. Now this is completely fine for the standard brakes, but as I'm not going to be putting standard brakes back on, this isn't going to be quite up to the job it used to be. The Motamec bias valve completely replaces the back end of the standard one. As you can see, there's a fluid input here and a fluid output there with an adjustable knob. I've purchased this adjustable bias valve off of Boffy Racing, and there's a few reasons why. In order to replace the whole standard bias valve, we need to link this pipe that went in here and this pipe that goes to the left front brake. And in the Boffy kit, they do supply you with a joiner. The other reason why I've purchased this from Boffy is the threads on this bias valve are actually NPT and the standard brake lines are M10. So we need an adapter from NPT to M10, and Boffy have had some custom made, which they also include in the kit. The whole purpose of an adjustable bias valve is so you can really dial in your brakes. If you've got some big brakes up the front and some tiny ones up the back, you're going to be able to send a good proportion of the braking force to the back or to the front. This is something that is really going to have to be set up once the car is on the road and moving. So to install this, I actually need to do the other upgrade at the same time. And that is the Davefab brake stopper. Originally this did come in black, but you know me, I do like a pink accessory. Now the reason why this has got to be installed at the same time as the brake bias valve is the brake bias valve actually sits here. Now the Davefab brake stopper actually replaces one of the standard parts on the brake master cylinder, and that is the bracket that sits here originally. This can be removed just by the two nuts that hold the master cylinder to the servo. Then the Davefab brake stopper simply sits on top of the brake master cylinder like so. Now I'm going to install the brake bias valve, and I'm going to put it this way. You'll see why once it's in the engine bay. Because I have installed it this way round, what I'm going to have to do is now manipulate the two standard lines so they fit a little bit better. I'm going to start with the rear line that goes into the adjustable bias valve, and to do that I need to put the adapter in that comes in the Boffy Racing kit. Yes, even though this is a brake line, they have advised me to use some PTFE tape. They've found that if you don't, it may leak. So I'm going to install this straight into the bias valve first. Now that's in and nice and tight, I'm then going to put the feed line into it. I'm going to have to bend it slightly to match the new angle of the bias valve. I'm going to install the bottom union as well while this is all still out of the car. Now for the front line, I need to install this adapter. So what I'm going to do is manipulate this line back behind the Davefab brake stopper and then install the coupler. Now it's time to install this whole assembly onto the car. This is a little bit trickier than putting the standard one back on. Because of the Davefab brake stopper, the nuts actually go into this recess here, and it's quite difficult to get the nuts started. The Davefab brake stopper actually uses this threaded hole in the right hand arch. It's a good idea before installing this to run a tap down this and make sure the threads are all clear. It can be a little bit difficult reinstalling this assembly, but with a little bit of wiggling it will go on. Davefab do supply you with the bolt that goes from the stopper to the arch. Once that's all bolted down nice and tight, we can go and clip the throttle cable back in. The new Davefab brake stopper does have a hole for this to go in. And then reconnect the brake fluid level sensor. The whole purpose of the Davefab brake stopper is to stop firewall deflection. By this I mean when you're applying a lot of pressure on the brake pedal, this whole firewall can actually move forward. Now, because the master cylinder is permanently attached to the arch, this can no longer happen as the whole assembly cannot push away from the firewall. I will install the rest of the brake lines off of camera as I still need to make the brake lines. But just a little side note, when you are bleeding them, this bias valve needs to be all the way open, as in all the travel towards the back. So because I haven't got all the lines installed and I've got no brakes on the car yet, I will be bleeding this whole assembly in a separate video. That is the master cylinder reinstalled alongside a Davefab brake stopper and a Motamec bias valve. Now that that's installed in the very near future, that's once all the bodywork is finished, I can install the rest of the brake upgrades. The two upgrades I have installed today hopefully will support my future brake upgrades and really benefit in making the most of the brakes. There are links to both products I've installed today in the description below. If this helped you or you enjoyed the video, make sure to comment down below and leave us a like. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.